Welcome to week 4 of our 10-week Whole Body Approach virtual program. This week, we are going to be discussing cravings and how rather than avoiding them, we should choose to be honoring them instead. Do you ever find yourself overthinking about how to avoid your cravings? Or maybe indulging in your favorite treat, even when you're not hungry? Both are extremely common for people, and these habits result from repeatedly doing something over time. We will work together towards developing techniques on how to honor our cravings, tools to cope with negative emotions, and also practice mindful eating techniques to truly listen to our bodies. We often eat or drink because something triggers a desire for food. These triggers are also called cues. Cues can be beneficial and affect how much we eat or how much we move, but other cues may lead to overeating and moving less. Hunger is an obvious cue. However, there are other triggers as well. A few possibilities that may lead us to eating is being with friends and going out to eat, the smell of your favorite bakery while walking, or emotions can trigger our eating, which is frequently referred to as emotional eating. Emotional eating, also known as stress eating, is eating food to sustain negative emotional needs rather than pursuing physical health and well-being. Stressful situations, whether it's related to family, work, relationships, or physical stress, often drive our urge to use food for comfort and fast relief from negative feelings. Food cues, when developed into a habit for managing emotions, becomes a response without thinking. We build habits when we do something over and over again, and it becomes an instinct. This can ultimately influence how much or what we eat, but also how much we move or how much we don't move. Changing habits required the same amount of effort that were used to create them, which was repeating them over and over again. Change will not happen overnight, similarly to how habits take time to develop. However, when we understand that food may have developed into an emotional coping tool, we can attempt to shift our actions to actionable ways that can soothe anxious, lonely, depressed, or frustrated thoughts. While we are listening to our body, to understand our negative thoughts, we can also practice mindfulness by addressing our cravings. Sometimes we may go to the store, but avoid buying certain foods because we may end up craving them if they're in the house. Cravings are typically classified as bad because it eventually leads to overeating and negative emotions such as guilt. However, cravings do not go away on their own. It has developed over human evolution to crave foods that are high in fat or sugar because they are more energy dense. If we restrict ourselves from these foods, our cravings may intensify for high fat, salt, sugar, or calories. It may feel like you only crave these types of foods. However, you probably crave a variety of different foods. For example, if your favorite treat was brownies and you had them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you may not necessarily crave them as much. They may get old and not taste as satisfying as it would when we treated these cravings as taboo. When we give ourselves permission to eat the foods our body tells us we want, those foods lose power over us. Ultimately, when you tell yourself you can eat the foods at any time, you realize you do not crave them as often as you had thought. In typical diets that emphasize restriction and elimination of food groups, the success rate is typically low. We usually get too wrapped up in taking foods or food groups away instead of adding more nutrients into our diet for our well-being. This ultimately drives the intense cravings we talked about and sudden urges to grab the first sweet thing in sight and eat more of it because you may not know the next time that you will be able to have this food. On the other hand, when we are eating mindfully, we are empowering our bodies to enjoy the fuel that food gives us, as well as the wide array of different tastes and textures. As we continue on with this lesson, we would like everyone to address each one of these prompts and answer on a scale including A for always, O for often, S sometimes, R rarely, and N never. You can take your time and pause the video to answer these following questions. We suggest that you save your answers and revisit them at the end of the program. 1. I am relaxed about eating. 2. I am comfortable about eating enough. 3. I feel it is okay to eat food that I like. 4. I enjoy food and eating. 5. I am comfortable with my enjoyment of food and eating. When you have given your truthful answer to each one of these statements, we hope that this program can help develop a healthy attitude towards eating. When the program is over, these types of questions can act as a guide for you and your relationship with food. As we wrap this week's lesson, we challenge you to truly pay attention to how your body goes beyond hunger, fullness, and cravings. You may notice that you reach for certain foods when you have low energy levels, you are more tired due to lack of sleep or stressful situations, or you have an upsetting event happen in your life. If you choose to alleviate these feelings to food, the first step is to begin to understand why you are reaching for these specific foods. Also, think about how those foods truly change your mood and feelings afterwards. After having the food, practice mindful eating strategies and ask yourself a few questions. Do you notice that you feel better? Is your energy still low? Do you get negative physical effects such as an upset stomach or heartburn? Do you end up feeling guilty about satisfying your craving? When we are mindful eating, we can choose a food that we know will help us feel better. Relating back to an early example, brownies do not become as intense of a craving when we do not restrict ourselves from it. However, when we honor what our body wants, we can truly listen to our body and what kind of food will make us feel better in the long run. Or we may choose to use one of the other coping tools that we discussed earlier. We all have triggers that cause us to eat. Together, we can work on being aware of these and use them to empower us. Being mindful of our habits is the first step towards developing healthy ones that support well-being and longevity. We will be discussing in detail next week specific steps you can take to truly achieve your goals. We look forward to seeing you there. Have a good week.